Hello, everyone. This is your host, alexbalgood, and this is Leap of Health. And today I am super excited. We have back Heidi Toy. She's a certified functional nutritional therapist. She's a certified functional medicine practitioner and the owner of Heidi Toy Functional Medicine. And this is our second or third time, I can't remember now. She's one of my favorites. And we're going to be talking about adrenal fatigue. A lot of people, I believe, they're seeing it a lot more in, social media, internet, or perhaps you heard of someone having it, but we don't know what it is. And before we dive into that topic today, Heidi, tell us a little bit about you and what do you do and how you got here really quick for all the people that don't know you yet.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me today. Hi, everybody, to your audience that's out there and listening, and thank you for tuning in, both on the live and on the recorded. So my name is Heidi Toy, as Alex already introduced me, and I am a certified functional medicine practitioner and a certified functional nutritional therapist. And a lot of people, when they go to get functional medicine, they don't realize how important that nutritional component is. And it's not about diet, it's about nutrition. And for a variety of reasons, a lot of people, when they hear diet, they think that's weight loss. And they're thinking, well, how's that going to help me if I have, where our topic today is adrenal fatigue. And I'm going down into the weeds because I do that. But nonetheless, nutrition is equally important. So I combine the two in my practice. And I came about this because I too had my own health consequence. I was suffering. I had several autoimmunes. I was losing my hair. I was bald shopping for wigs at one time in my life. I was extremely fatigued, where if you ever go onto my website, it's all there, in my information in my about. But I was so fatigued, and I was, it wasn't that I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep enough, and that's all I was doing. And I wanted to 100% fix that because it was no life. And I was in a different career path at the time. I was not a functional medicine. I was involved in ultrasound. I actually at that time sold and led development. And I am a sonographer by trade in the background, that I know how to do the ultrasounds. I still hold those registries. But nonetheless, I had my own health crisis. And I sought out somebody who could help me heal. And at that time, nobody knew what functional medicine was. Like, nobody had a clue. This is years ago. I'm going to date myself here, but probably 15 to 17 years ago. So nobody knew what I was talking about. And when you told somebody that you were going gluten-free, they had no idea even what gluten was. Now we have an educated consumer. We have people who are out there and they're getting educated because of people like me and Alex on the internet and podcasts like this. So nonetheless, I came up through the trenches. I got myself healthy because I got involved, and I had a great guide to help me do that. And then I decided I wanted to do this because I really was passionate about helping other people heal. And so I went back to school and took my background that I already had in the medical field, because that really helped me greatly. Because I do understand the body and how it works, of course, beyond just going and getting training in this. And I went to do this and brought it all together. And now I see people, and here I am, I think 11 years in practice, and helping people heal. That's my vibe.
No, that's amazing. I think it almost like really takes one to know what's going on to really help others.
100%.
You really know what's going on. You really know how you felt, so you can really relate and ask more questions with your clients. And so you can really dive in deep in certain things of health, while you're trying to discover what's going on with your clients. So I feel like, that's a plus, that sometimes we do have to go through these health scares. And then sometimes people like this become practitioners, and they're great practitioners because they don't just have the knowledge, from the books, but they actually have experienced what it's like to be sick and not being able to function and things like that. So thanks.
It's also, as you know, it's not just that I understand and can fathom what it's like to be sick. I
Mhm.
also know what it takes to get healthy. And there's
Exactly.
one thing in my practice that I ask anybody to do, that even if it wasn't at one time for me therapeutically, but there's not one thing that I've ever asked somebody in my practice to do that I haven't done myself.
Mhm.
You know, like even if it's a therapeutic diet, because not all nutrition is going to be forever, it's sometimes just therapeutically to heal. But I've put myself on that therapy plan, either in my, somebody helped me do it, or I put myself on it, either for my own healing or so that I can fathom what it's like to find these ingredients or live this life, or how do I go out with friends, or how do I socialize within the parameters of this therapy plan so that I can help people, because it's a lived experience.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel too, I I would like for just everybody that it's listening and that has like any health thing going on. Uh, there's not like a magic pill for what you already have done to your body, whether it is obesity, whether it is gut problems, whether it is whatever it is, right? Uh,
100%.
like you have to put the work for it now.
You have to want it.
Like if you want to be healthy, it's gonna be work, and that's kind of like the first thing you have to like acknowledge and be like, you know what, I got to this point now, I have diabetes, I have this, I have that, I'm having problems with my joints, whatever it is.
Or fatigue, like we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, our fatigue, exactly.
Yeah,
Whatever it is, something is happening, and now unfortunately we have to do the work. So once you
and
acknowledge
we have to
that,
want to change. We have to want to change. And we
yes,
have to want to embrace that change. And side note, it's not like you're going to do this for a while. You're going to make these changes in your life, and you're going to embrace them. And this is your new life.
yeah,
And would be, even though that's not, necessarily what we're talking about, if somebody wanted to lose weight, it's like, and just even say that somebody went to Weight Watchers and they wanted to lose weight, they went to Weight Watchers. Weight Watchers is wanting you to adopt a new lifestyle where you embrace that lifestyle, and that is your new lifestyle. So if you were walking, say 10,000, you went from 0 to 10,000 steps and changed your nutrition to be more meat and fat and vegetables and healthy choices. It's not, I lost 20 pounds and now I'm going to go back to McDonald's and sitting on the couch watching TV. Then all that's going to come back. And that's the same thing when we take back. I mean, if let's just say there was a parasite, for example, you're not always going to be killing a parasite, but you're going to be doing what you need to do to keep your microbiome healthy so that you don't get another parasite. So it's a change in life, and sometimes we don't want to do that, but we just need to embrace the change, and then also know that it's steps. We're not looking for perfection, we're looking for consistency.
exactly. And just know that once you go into this health journey, it's a new lifestyle that we're not going to be perfect, but you're going to be working forever. Like this is until you die, pretty much.
Yes, we become
If
aware,
you
but we never arrive.
exactly. So just, for everybody today, for that's today's one of our main things that you need to keep in mind.
Yeah, your takeaway is this.
This is if you take one thing, please take this one thing.
Yes.
If you want to be healthier, it's work, and it's going to take your lifetime pretty much. And that's just the best way to see it. And it's not a bad thing. You're just going to be healthier and better, and you're going to think, clearly, and you're going to just feel better overall. So why not?
And you will feel better. You will start to feel better 100%. I've never, if somebody takes and embraces the things that we're telling them, and at least I've seen this, and I've seen 1,700 people plus in practice at this point in time. If they take and embrace the lifestyle, and it might be some supplements, but it's mainly lifestyle, and that's functional medicine. And I think that's a big thing that's missed out there. Even more so that I want to say when I see MDs. So I want to just clear something up there too. Like not everybody, many people will think, well, are you a doctor? The best people doing functional medicine, if I do say so myself, are not doctors. Okay. And if you go to a doctor, that does functional medicine, that means that they had to abandon what they were taught in Western medicine to obtain their MD or DO and go over and learn functional medicine. And most people teaching functional medicine are chiropractors.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so then learn this and then, be able to administer it. But the thing is that I see missed oftentimes by, and I'm not saying all, but many people who cross-train over into functional medicine from a Western modality, if they haven't had a lived experience, they think it's tests and pills. That's only part of the equation. It is a lifestyle change, because when we talk about this thing in the background of me, maybe people are wondering when we talk about adrenal fatigue today, but it's not a pill that got you into adrenal fatigue. And it's not necessarily a pill that's going to get you out. I mean, yes, there's nutraceuticals, but I have people come to me all the time and they'll be like, I'm so fatigued and I tried magnesium and it didn't help. Well, magnesium is a crucial part of helping the adrenals and helping the recovery, but it's not the only part. Another big thing I hear is, what do you think of CBD oil? Well, I think CBD oil is great, but it's not going to it's not going to heal you. It might help you, but it's not going to heal you. Those are lifestyle things.
Yeah. And I think that's like going back to what we've been talking from the beginning of this interview, it's like, yeah, there's so many great things that are going to help you out there, many great supplements and things that you can take. However, it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to do this and everything's going to be fixed, So let's go into that. Tell us, what's adrenal fatigue?
Okay, so adrenal fatigue, and some people have moved away from that term, even though that's kind of still the buzz term. And I kind of sometimes get people who will come on and say, I thought you said there is no adrenal fatigue, when I call it adrenal fatigue or put that hashtag. Okay. That's what the industry is now groomed. And at one time I called it that too. And I guess I still will, interchange that. But really, adrenal fatigue, like if you went over to Western medicine and said adrenal fatigue, the endocrinologist would just shut right down. They're like, not even going to hear you. But what we have acknowledged is that it's really not the two. So let's talk first. What are the adrenals? They are two glands that sit above the kidneys. And they are responsible for putting out your stress hormones and your sex hormones, both male and female, but menstruating females also have the ovaries that pick that up. So prepubescent, and we could do a whole nother podcast on female hormones and how this ties, but female hormones never go out of balance on their own. It's tied to what you see behind me in adrenal fatigue. Okay. But any event, the two adrenals, two glands that sit above your kidneys. So the kidneys in medical terms are called renals, renals, and adrenal above the renal. So suprarenal or adrenal. So that's how they got their name. And adrenal. So the AD is added to the renal. Okay, so above the renals. And there's two of them. They put out sex and stress hormones. And adrenal fatigue, what was first thought and still marketed by many practitioners, and the truth is we don't really know. So there's two different kind of schools of thought here, but I'm going to just mesh them all together, because the reason why it got to, whether you want to call it adrenal fatigue or what's called hypothalamus pituitary adrenal dysregulation, so HPAD. Okay, and there's some blog posts on my website, Heidi Toy Functional Medicine, under blog, and you can go in and I talk all about this comparison and contrast. But nonetheless, what is the hypothalamus pituitary? So your brain is the master regulator of the endocrine system, and the adrenals are part of the endocrine system. And so it's going to take the brain to go and tell the adrenals through chemical messenger of a hormone to respond and release whatever they need to release. Okay. And in this case, it's going to be stress hormones, and namely cortisol and adrenaline. And most people know adrenal fatigue about cortisol. And they want to believe that cortisol is bad, but cortisol is actually a great hormone. It's a glucocorticosteroid hormone, another big term, gluco meaning sugar. So it's there to manage sugar, blood sugar regulation when we're in a stress state or when we're sleeping. Okay, so when would it do it in a stress state? Well, if you ever get low blood sugar because you haven't eaten, or you have hypoglycemia and then you get hangry, hungry, and angry, that's because you don't have enough blood sugar to feed the brain. And that's what the body always wants to do, is it wants to keep that brain alive. And the brain, if I might say so, and I'm not trying to be offensive by this, but it's a glucose whore. It loves sugar, okay? Unless you become a keto adapted, but it will still want to get that sugar. Okay, so when blood sugar plummets and we don't eat something to bring it back up, the adrenals will fire cortisol, which can be an angry hormone. So we're hungry with this. And what does the cortisol do? It goes over to the liver and knocks on the door and says, give me that stored blood sugar so I can get it to the brain. And if you've ever heard of some of these different things like diabetics take, like metformin, that blocks that conversion. So there's not blood sugar, so much sugar in the blood, because that's causative. So adrenal fatigue, I kind of went off into the weeds, is what? Adrenal fatigue is when we become fatigued because there's too much emotional, dietary, and pain-hidden inflammation stress. So anything that comes and demands cortisol, and that's our life. And that's what this diagram behind me is. And that's where I'm going to go like this. So you can see stress is the middle. So when we have perceived stress or circadian rhythm stress or glycemic, I got to move this way, I guess, dysregulation or something inflammatory that's going on, and it demands cortisol to constantly be being pumped out, then all of a sudden the brain, that's the hypothalamus pituitary, says, wait a minute, cortisol is a great hormone, but it's also can be causative or catabolic. If you've ever seen somebody who's gotten cortisol shots, and they might like for example, when I was a kid, we had a lineman that we knew, and he got stung by bees and he was allergic to the bees. So they gave him cortisol shots in his hips. Well, the cortisol eventually deteriorated his joint muscle, and he ended up in a wheelchair. So cortisol, while it brought down the inflammation, it also was catabolic and started deteriorating his hips. Okay, so cortisol, like all hormones, is supposed to be there in the right, and the body knows how to put the right amount. But what happens is we, in our lifestyle, we hijack that. And so adrenal fatigue, in the sense that we're talking adrenal fatigue, is always been thought that we had too many stressors, emotional, dietary, pain, hidden inflammation, that called on that cortisol too much, too often, and the adrenal gland got burned out and stopped putting out the cortisol. And the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis theory is that no, the adrenals still put out cortisol, but the brain, the control center, perceives too much stress and knows that cortisol is catabolic and says, I'm going to dampen that signal and stop putting that signal out for the adrenals to put out cortisol. And why does it cause fatigue? Which I wished I had another display to put up, but I can't slide that because you'd have to go in and manually do all this stuff. But anyway, if you've ever heard of what's called your circadian rhythm, which is also part of the brain, and it is regulated.
And we talked about it before.
Yep, and it's regulated by the sun and the moon, or light and dark cycles, and that is influencing cortisol. And so cortisol should be highest in the morning. So I'm saying if I had a chart and 6 a.m. was here, and then as the day goes on, cortisol slopes down and it becomes lowest at night. And the reciprocal hormone is melatonin. And how do we get melatonin? We go out into the sunlight. First thing in the morning is the best time, so that our retina can take in that sunlight and tell the pineal gland, another control center in the brain, to make, with all kinds of nutrients, to make the hormone melatonin, and they are reciprocal or inverse or opposite hormones. When cortisol is high, melatonin should be low, and vice versa. So here's cortisol does this and melatonin does this. So, okay. And so if we have too many stressors and that circadian rhythm gets off, then we get fatigued. And so the thought was always, well, we need to fix the gland. And my adage, if you will, is that the gland is to your computer what your hardware is. Okay, so if you had a virus in your computer and every day I came and I replaced your hard drive and gave you a new one, but I didn't replace the operating system or clean up the virus, I put in a new hard drive. Well, within the day of you opening files and doing whatever, you'd reinfect that hard drive. The adrenals are the hard drive. The brain is the operating system. So the real thing is that we need to retrain the brain. And how do we do that? We do that by resetting our circadian rhythm and consistently following things in life, which is what? Well, first, before I go through what that is, I'm going to talk about this slide behind me, and I might have to bob and weave. So just know, here's my bob and weave. Okay, so I'm going to start out with, I know there's 4 things on here, but some of them could blend together, but I'm going to start out with talking about emotional, then dietary, then pain, hidden inflammation. So emotional stress, if you see up on the, nope, I guess it's this way. It's a reverse. I had to reverse this of what I think. So you, when you see this, can read it, the viewers, is this stress, okay? So that can be anything from, you can see serotonin, dopamine, GABA, glutamate, but that's what's going on with the neurotransmitters. And then what you can't see, and I wish I could slide it down, but is like mental stress and burnout and things of that nature. So we all have emotional stress. Okay. And we've just come through like a pretty hellacious time in the 2020 with what was going on with, the virus and things of that nature, and the fear and the lockdowns and everything else. I mean, that alone is big stress. And I'm seeing people that have maybe gone into adrenal fatigue or hypothalamus pituitary adrenal dysregulation just from, I don't want to say from just from that alone, because all of these, when I talk emotional, dietary, pain, they can all be present, and one can be the straw that broke the camel's back. But most people, and if I could put it into bubbles or weigh it out, emotional stress gets the least amount of airtime, and it is, although it's getting more airtime, but it is one of the biggest causative reasons for this, because it's not just big catastrophic things like the death of a loved one, moving, the lockdown. It can also be acute things that we don't even think are in our lives, like what? Driving to work in rush hour traffic in LA every day. I used to live in Manhattan. I now live in Wisconsin. People, why did you do that? And it's like, not because I don't love the apple. I love New York and I had a great life there, but it was also toxic and stressful for a whole variety of different reasons. And I wanted to slow down because I wanted my own health and healing. Now, I'm not telling everybody you got to move out of a big city. I'm saying you're going to have to really pinpoint what's your stressors. Toxic relationships, working in a job you hate, having a boss that doesn't get along with you, having a family member that you have a long-term rife with that you're never going and fixing that rife, not slowing down, just, perceived stress, money worries. I mean, all of these different things can be emotional stressors. And so one is to remove them if possible. And how do I fix that? Mindfulness-based stress reduction. And it's a real thing. So you start doing things like meditation and being mindful, maybe turning off the radio when you drive to work and start being aware of your surroundings, focus on your breathing, maybe start something like a gratitude journal, live with it, do it with intention and do it daily, like set time aside for your own self. If you need to work outside of that, because it takes a tribe and you might have to go work with somebody, if you have childhood trauma or relationship trauma, you might have to work with a therapist. That's not my scope of practice, but if I see it, I will tell a client that, look, all the other stuff we can work on, but this is beyond the scope and we need to go talk to somebody get some therapy of some sort. Okay, so that's the perceived stress. And at the same time, it can hijack, like I said, these this way, these serotonin, dopamine, all these different neurotransmitters. And we may need to run some tests and see what's going on and help you have the right nutrients or digestion to get these built. And it's not about giving you a Prozac or something like that. It's about actually building the neurotransmitter. Like an SSRI is a blocker of the receptor sites. And what's an SSRI? Like Prozac, Wellbutrin, those are a blocker to block the receptor sites so that the uptake of serotonin is decreased. So the serotonin you do have is around more. Well, that means you need more serotonin. And it's not about blocking receptor sites. It's about figuring out why you don't have enough. And usually that comes down to diet and digestion, because what's the main contributor to serotonin, dopamine, GABA, glutamate? Protein, amino acids, and you got to be able to digest and break them down. Next is B vitamins and minerals. So nutrition plays a role here, but nonetheless, that is the perceived stress part and I call it emotional stress. Okay. Then I'm going to go to the dietary stress part. Another thing that is a hijacker and the biggest, now I want to say the biggest because I just said emotional stress is the biggest one, but it's a close second, and it's the one we have the most control of if you choose to do it. Okay, so what you put on your plate and in your mouth and eat and drink, that's completely up to you, and you have a choice. Okay, and you might need counseling and therapy around it, and a lot of people emotionally eat, so that's where these two are tied. None of these are independent. A lot of folks emotionally eat. I personally was an emotional eater and sometimes can find myself slipping back into that, but I find when I'm not doing my meditation and things are getting stressful and let my life get stressful, even if I moved to Little Wisconsin, because helping people heal can be a stressful endeavor. Okay. And I take high responsibility for that, but nonetheless, dietary stress. Okay. So that can come. And the big one is called, glycemic dysregulation. Okay. Sugar dysregulation. And it can be from eating sugar directly, which I think there's a lot of people I hear out there that say, well, I gave up sugar and it didn't help. Yep, but you're going to also probably have to give up things that turn to sugar quickly in your blood. It's also about meal timing. So I see a lot of people going, well, I'm tired and I'm trying to lose weight. And so I started intermittent fasting. Guess what? Your body perceives that as stress. Intermittent fasting, when you have adrenal fatigue or hypothalamus pituitary dysregulation, is probably not the ideal thing. And I'll talk just kind of briefly on that. Yes, do I believe that there's a time to fast? Yes, I believe that you should stop eating around 6, 7 p.m. You should be in bed by 10. So you got a 3-hour window that gave your body time to digest and prioritize digestion over detox. And you are now fasting from 7 p.m. when you ended those meals till 6, 7 a.m. in the morning. So you got a whole 12-hour fast that just happened. And when we are resetting our circadian rhythm, we should also be going to bed, which is going to be, this one, we're going to go circadian rhythm and talk about that as well. But that's going to directly tie into glycemic dysregulation. So you can see a little bit there, poor diet choices, meal timing. It can also be the wrong meals. And you can say, well, what's the right? And there's so much information out there and so confusing. And I would say to anybody, if you're not working with a practitioner and you don't know what you need as far as macronutrients, the main thing is to start. And what is a macro? It's carbs, fat, protein. And we talked about it extensively in another time we met. If you said, what should I be eating for macros? Start out with 30, 30, 40. Okay. 30 fat, 30 protein, 40 carbohydrates. Carbohydrates coming from what? Non-packaged foods, period.
Vegetables are carbs, by the way.
Yeah, that's where I was going next. Yes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Interject anytime. You know this stuff too. So, carbohydrates, gams, sweet potato, okay, rutabaga, squash, and they are also going to bring the minerals that the adrenals love and need magnesium and potassium and vitamin A and C and all the beautiful things that our body wants and needs. And I will say one thing, I see a lot of people though, when they do this and they might give up chips and next thing you know, they're eating almonds and dried fruit. Okay. Maybe a tablespoon of each a day. Okay. And I know nobody wants to hear that. And some people might be thinking, but what about keto? I thought keto was so great. Keto is great therapeutically if you have to fix glycemic dysregulation, but it's not so great if you need to heal and fix adrenal fatigue or the hypothalamus. We need carbohydrates, and it's going to depend, and you can get some testing to find out what's best for you. But if you're doing this and saying, okay, I'm going to fix myself, or I'm going to start healing myself based on this podcast or what I've heard, then I would say do the 30, 30, 40, and then you're going to have to tinker. And then look at meal timing. Like, don't go long stretches and let that blood sugar dip so the adrenals perceive it as stress and want to feed the brain and have to fire. You're going to want to eat maybe every 3-4 hours until you have this rectified. And then as you heal, you can start looking at doing intermittent fasting and longer fasts, or cutting out carbohydrates and going more ketogenic, or and everybody has a different reason why they come. Sometimes I have to prioritize. Sometimes people come to me and they do have hypothalamus pituitary adrenal dysregulation because they also have a gut inflammatory issue, which is the next piece we're going to carry. And in order to help their fatigue heal, we're going to have to heal that gut. And that might mean we even have to remove everything but meat. I mean, or except for meat, excuse me, even vegetables. Does that mean I think vegetables are bad? No, but I have people with Crohn's that cannot digest or absorb anything with vegetables. They can't break it down. So now Crohn's is an inflammatory autoimmune of the gastrointestinal tract. So we have to remove what's causing the inflammation, because that will make the adrenals fire cortisol. And we want to do anything that's an assault on the adrenals. We want to remove that. Okay. So, kind of covered the diet. We want to have a good inclusion of an ancestral, some people will call it paleo. You might need something even more strict than that. It just depends. You might need different macros than I'm saying, the 30, 30, 40, but 30 fat, 30 protein, 40 carbohydrates, and those carbohydrates are vegetables. And if I gave you a plate that was round like this, it would be a palm of my hand, of a palm to 3, because protein is the stool. And if you're a female listening to this, females do not eat enough protein.
Right.
Let's say it again. Females do not eat enough protein. You need to eat more protein. Okay, 100%. You have to have protein. And let me tell you what, ladies, 2 eggs in the morning isn't going to cut it. That's like maybe 11 grams of protein. Okay, 9 to 11 grams, depending on. So, and it's equal that much fat. You're going to have to add something on, like what? Leftover, some steak, leftover chicken, some ground beef. You might do ground beef and pork and put some seasoning in it and make some sausages yourself, but you need more protein. I would say 30 to 40 grams at every meal. Okay, I know that's like, what? You need it. Okay. So that sets the stage. It helps become satiated or satiety. And it also helps your blood sugar, okay, because it's a slower digester. And your body's focused on that, and you have the nutrients in there. But nonetheless, 30 fat, 30 protein, 40 carbs. Start to tinker with that. And please, if you're healing adrenal fatigue, prioritize healing over weight loss. Once you get this dialed in, the weight loss will happen effortlessly. Cortisol will make your arms and legs skinny and your belly big. Okay. And it will make your muscles atrophy because it's catabolic. It tears down, like I talked about the guy, the lineman. You've ever seen somebody at like a function? If you go to a gathering of church or social meeting or whatever, and you might know somebody that was diabetic and they were, or rheumatoid arthritis, excuse me, and they were on cortisol shots or prednisone. Prednisone is synthetic, or that little 1% hydrocortisone cream, that's cortisol. Okay. So you can't keep using it because like it'll thin your skin. But when they also give it to somebody that's rheumatoid arthritis, they get the skinny legs and the larger belly. That's what cortisol is doing. Well, that's what your own natural cortisol is doing because there's too many of these stressors going on. Okay, next we're going to talk about inflammatory stress, which I call inflammatory signals, which in my buckets, emotional stress, dietary stress, and pain, hidden inflammation. This is where the hidden part. Okay, because people ask me, what's the hidden part? Well, the hidden part can be your blood sugar dysregulation, and it also can be too much sugar because that's inflammatory. Okay, or once sugar or carbs turns to glucose in the blood, it's causative to the blood vessel, and the body wants to get it into the cell right away. And that's when insulin comes in and starts putting it in the cell. And when someone becomes diabetic or insulin resistant, it's because there's too much blood sugar and insulin is constantly screaming at the cell to open up. And pretty soon the cell says, hey, I'm not listening to you. And that's the resistance. That's the resistance to the insulin. So how do you get that resistance to go away? You take away the sugar, but that can be an inflammatory process as well. Sugar and over-carbohydrating yourself with the processed foods are inflammatory. Seed oils, canola oil, safflower oil, any of that, those are inflammatory oils. If you have them in your house, go and take and throw them in the trash. Okay, yes. They're no good. Go and get whole oils. I'm just going to ask yourself this simple question. Where does canola oil come from? Can you answer it? No, you can't. Really, because you don't know. Yeah. Where does avocado oil come from? Avocados. Where does olive oil come from? Almonds. Where does olive oil come from? Olives. Okay. So if you don't know where it comes from, that means it's probably synthetic, which canola oil comes from a rapeseed under high heat and pressure. And it was a way for the American farmer to be subsidized in crops, and they had to come up with something to do with these crops. And that's where soy and canola and safflower and all this stuff. And then it has a long shelf life, and they stick it in all these processed commercial foods, and it doesn't go rancid quickly like these natural oils, so that their time to market was cheaper, and then sitting on the shelf could be longer, and it saved all these big corporations money. Okay. And that's the fact of the matter. But it's also highly detrimental. Could be a whole podcast just on the detriments of canola oil. There's a lot out there that you can go and read on. I know that Dr. Mercola has a whole series on it right now that he came out and talked all about canola oil, but we've been saying it for longer than just recently. Been saying it. I learned it 15 years ago, so we know it. Okay. So
and also too, because to add right there, a lot of people has asked me, well, I've seen organic canola oil, and I'm like,
no.
There's organic cookies. Does that mean that's going to be good for you?
There's organic wheat. Forget about it.
Yeah, exactly.
New Yorker, forget about it. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't know where it came from. If all of a sudden I pulled a piece of pizza off a New York floor or a New York sidewalk and brought you 2 pieces of pizza on a plate, and let's just say you could have the gluten and everything else. Okay. And I brought you 2 pieces and I said, okay, I'm going to give you these 2 pieces of pizza, but one I dropped on the ground but you can't tell. And one I got fresh. One slipped off the plate on the ground. Pick. You'd be like, I don't know where that came. I don't know which one. Okay. Then why would you do it with canola oil repeatedly? Okay. You don't know where it comes from. Stop eating it. It's no good. Okay.
Exactly. Even if it says organic. Sometimes those things are just labels. And as I just said, there's organic cookies. That doesn't mean that's going to be good for your diet. Even if they're organic, yeah, they might have a little bit of better ingredients. Are they good for you? Probably not if you're eating them all day long or after 6 p.m. So stop that.
100%. You have to stop. And I mean, you can choose. And yes, it's more expensive. I get that. You can also make things yourself. And there's so many free recipes out there. And once you get into the process of it, I mean, that's part of the lifestyle change. Like I do tell people, you are going to have to cook, and you are going to have to stop eating out a lot. Like, doesn't mean you can never go out and enjoy yourself. And do I ever consume canola oil? Sure. But I happen to like Mexican food a lot. So, and I go to a Mexican place that they know me, and they even let me bring my dog in and all these other things. And they know that I ask if they'll cook with lard. And of course they're supposed to cook with canola oil, but I'll ask, and I mean, they're like, you probably know this, but they're like, oh my gosh, a girl after our own heart. We want to cook with lard. Like I ask if my stuff can be cooked with lard versus canola. And I used to travel all the time in my prior life when I was doing my own healing. And I used to fly 150,000 air miles annually, and that wasn't my job. I did something else. I led development of diagnostic ultrasound, but I was healing. This was years ago. I was in my own health crisis. And I would go someplace and it would be like a restaurant in the morning that had a breakfast buffet and there was a chef there. I would ask for the cracked eggs and I would bring him a little packet of butter and ask him if he could make my omelet, my veggie omelet, sans the cheese, because I don't do dairy, but sans the cheese. And that's me. That's not everybody. Okay. If he would make my omelet with the butter versus this spray Pam that he was going to put in the pan, and with my own or eggs that I saw a big, huge carton there versus the big egg batter mixed up, because I want real, whole, unadulterated food. And you can ask and they will oblige. And that doesn't mean that you're never going to have canola oil. But if you start choosing what you're doing at home and you start cooking at home or preparing and take ownership of this, you can remove it. But it is inflammatory and it is a stressor, and it's the sneaky part. Another sneaky one is heavy metals. I'm not going to go high into that. I'm just going to say that if you are off in your minerals, the same receptor sites that take up a heavy metal like lead or cadmium or something like that are the same receptor sites that take up minerals. And minerals are going to they're going to be in all whole foods, and predominantly, well, meat is going to have like a lot of zinc, and all seafood and everything like that. So zinc is going to be there. But then when we're talking potassium and magnesium, it's going to come from those vegetables. And 100%, according to Linus Pauling, 100% of Americans are deficient in potassium. And potassium is going to, it's a lot of foods, but it's really going to come from those vegetables. Okay. But if you're deficient and your vitality is sodium, potassium, the pump around the cell, and your adrenals love that. Okay. So does your thyroid. I mean, I could be a whole nother podcast. Okay. But, if you are getting heavy metal toxic, the way to uproot that heavy metal toxicity is not to go on this big chelation detox. It's to find out what minerals you're deficient in. And we can easily do that by a test. Okay. Very easy, non-invasive, send it to the lab. I read the test and I can see what minerals are displaced. And we start adding those minerals back in the right ratios that you need for your bio-individual body. And we start uprooting or taking from the cell. And it is a form of chelation, but it's a very gentle chelation. But if you are toxic on the cell receptor site and that is being owned by a heavy metal, well, now like you cannot get the mineral you need. I'm going to use the thyroid. When you hear T4 thyroid, that's iodine. But what is a big causative problem is fluoride. Where's fluoride? Toothpaste and water. Okay, so that is the same receptor site that iodine needs. And so sometimes I have people come to me and they'll be like, they might be fatigued because of their thyroid. The two big glands are thyroid and adrenal. And if the adrenals are driving a race car, thyroid is riding shotgun. They're coming along for the ride. And it might be a heavy metal toxicity. And then we need to remove that. So, there's more involved than just going and getting a heavy metal chelator, but nonetheless, that's another inflammatory. And then what's the big inflammatory? I don't want to say the big, but the one that's really the hidden is not digesting. And everybody says it's a parasite. Okay, well, what came first, chicken or the egg? Not digesting will cause you to get a parasite. Or could. I shouldn't say will, could. Okay, why? How did that happen? All right, so first let's talk about just in brief. We bring food in. Digestion starts here. We need to be in a calm state. Rest and digest is called parasympathetic. So we need to be seated, not standing, not walking, not moving, not driving the car, not watching a movie, sitting down so that our brain can engage and tell our body to start releasing the digestive juices. We chew, masticate our food. And we have enzymes here that start breaking down fat and carbs in our saliva. We swallow that bolus of food. It goes to the stomach and it mixes with hydrochloric acid, or stomach acid is really the layman's term. And I call that the burn and churn. And the food needs to get acidic enough to open up the pyloric sphincter. It's the valve between the stomach and the small intestine. And then that acidic food called chyme moves into the small intestine. That acidity of that hydrochloric acid on a pH scale is the level of battery acid. It is 0.8. Battery acid is 0. If I took a bug, a parasite, and dropped it into a vat of battery acid, it would burn, baby, burn. It couldn't. If I threw it on you, it would burn. If you are missing that stomach acid because you either didn't get yourself into a parasympathetic state and or you have decreased it by what? Carbohydrate, high carbohydrate diet decreases stomach acid. Age decreases stomach acid. H. pylori, which is a bacteria that can overtake and neutralize stomach acid and live in the stomach, is a problem. Alcohol neutralizes stomach acid. Pharmaceutical grade drugs decrease stomach acid. So there's just a few, okay? And those are lifestyle. By and large, they're lifestyle. So now if we've lost that hydrochloric acid, we now have lost our first line of defense because parasites and bugs are on almost everything we eat. We just don't see them. They're microscopic. Don't be grossed out. It just is what it is, right? We're like insignificant to the bugs around us. They don't need us, okay? But we also lost our ability to digest because that chyme is an acidity level on a pH of 1.5 to 3. And that pyloric sphincter that I talked about, the one-way valve between the stomach and the small intestine will not open if that food doesn't get broken down into chyme and become that acidity level. And so now and then eventually you could say, but I live on a proton pump inhibitor, a purple pill, Nexium, because I get heartburn. Okay, well, you're not fixing heartburn if you have that. You're just masking it. Okay, and that's another podcast. But nonetheless, we move that chyme into the small intestine because it tells the body when that pyloric sphincter sees that that's acidic enough, it opens up that pyloric sphincter and says, you're broken down. I can digest and absorb you. But if it doesn't happen, then we have fats rancidify, proteins putrefy, and carbohydrates ferment. And I believe we talked about that on another podcast. Nonetheless, if it's not happening, it's now toxic. Go and take a bunch of food. I think I said this, throw it in a blender, put a little apple cider vinegar in there, spit in there, whatever, blend it up, and then leave it out at room temperature or 70, 80 degrees for 2-3 hours and then go back and take a whiff of it. I'll tell you what, it's starting to become toxic. And it also slows the transit time of the food through the small intestine. And that's when we start getting something called gut dysbiosis. Too much bad, not enough good gut bacteria. We also get things called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And all of that can lead to the gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation. And that right there is inflammatory, and that's the hidden inflammation. So when people say or ask me, when I talk about emotional stress, dietary stress, and pain hidden inflammation, the hidden part is in the gut. And we need to find out what's going on in the gut. And of course, lifestyle is going to help heal that, but you may need, and oftentimes that's where the functional medicine part comes in. But it's not just about testing and going, oh, hey, you don't have enough stomach acid. And then it's like, well, but then the question needs to be, why? Well, is it because you have H. pylori? Is it because you're eating too many carbohydrates? Is it because you've aged? Is it, because we do lose stomach acid, and stomach acid isn't a bad thing to give, but I also see other practitioners, and I'm not saying that they're right or wrong, it's just not a practice that I would take on, that they'll say, well, here, you can come on and buy hydrochloric acid on my website and I'll tell you how to take it. Okay, but that's just another Band-Aid. You really need to get to the crux of this and find out and work with somebody who understands these things I'm saying. And that's going to be somebody like me or Alex. Okay, that's what's going to happen, is you got to have somebody, and you might need some testing. But that's the inflammatory stress. So, and then there might be things that like you might have a known autoimmune. Okay, if you're not helping put that autoimmune into remission, well, then that's a known inflammation. You might have bursitis. You might have, I don't know, something going on. Like I could name any number of things that you're like, yeah, I know I have this. Well, that's a known inflammation. Maybe you have an acute stress injury. Maybe you hurt yourself working out at the gym, or you pulled a muscle or sprained an ankle. Well, that's a known inflammatory response. But the hidden one is going to really come from the diet you eat and what that consists of, sugar and the wrong oils, or not being able to digest and absorb, or having gut dysbiosis, too much bad, not enough good gut bacteria, which, by the way, you don't fix that by taking probiotic, FYI, okay? And then the next piece is going to be maybe a parasite or SIBO or IBS or something like that. And that's the hidden part, okay? So that all has to be ferreted out or looked into. And all of that, as you can see, all these arrows pointing towards my head, which, interestingly enough, I'm not going to call myself a brain, but that's the brain, and that's where my brain is in my head. Sometimes not, but anyway, but today I think it is. Anyway, so the brain, and then the brain says, the hypothalamus pituitary says, whoa, too many stressors, asking for too much of this catabolic hormone called cortisol, which is supposed to be doing good, but we now have it in excess. Let's dampen that signal and shut it down, because it's deteriorating the gut lining, because that's the first thing it goes after. Okay, it's made out of glutamate. The gut lining, the mucosal lining, that's leaky gut, can also be caused by not digesting. It can be caused by the H. pylori. It can be caused by the dysbiosis. Okay, so that's another hidden inflammation. Anyway, off into the weeds. But the brain perceives all of these stressors that are demanding cortisol all the time, and the cortisol was supposed to just have its normal job. We put all this extra on its plate, and the brain says, catabolic, this will be causative to the healthy body tissue, dampen that signal and shut it down. And that is hypothalamus pituitary dysregulation, aka adrenal fatigue. The cortisol is influencing your circadian rhythm, and you then get fatigue. Now you might say, but you missed the whole circadian. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not good at that part, right? Okay, the circadian disruption. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to skip over that, but I could move that into the different things, but mainly that would be either perceived stress or hidden stress, hidden inflammatory stress. And you can see them right there: shift work, jet lag, daylight savings time. Okay, when people work with me that have autoimmunes, because anything that's up in this green section can cause anything in any one of these can cause an immune response and can put somebody out of a remission autoimmune state, which we do naturally without drugs. Some people need some drugs, but we try to do it naturally. I'm one of those people. I have several autoimmunes in remission by living the lifestyle that we're talking about here today. When we go into daylight savings time, the shift in the fall and the spring, they can get a flare. So I help them build up to that. How do we do it? We'll maybe work a month, 6 weeks, 2 months in advance, and they'll start shifting themselves 15 minutes. But that means they have to be consistent. It can't be one night I'm going to bed at 10, weekends I'm like a warrior, I'm at 1. No, autoimmunes and anybody, we need to consistently, remember, we're not looking for perfection. Once in a while it might happen, and you know it when you do it or when we shift into daylight savings time. But consistently, we need to be in bed when the sun, not the sun goes down, but by 10 o'clock. Otherwise, that circadian rhythm I'm talking about, it starts to creep. And it creeps where we get a second wind, because cortisol starts to come up to be able to go to the stored blood sugar when we're sleeping at night and feed the brain. And that's happening without you even having, it's a voluntary response. Your body's just doing it. But nonetheless, we start shifting people to 15 minutes. So if they go to bed at 10, we have to start working, and we're going to set the clocks back an hour. We got to start working them back so that they get to the point where they're 9. So when that automatic comes, because the government does it and everybody's shifted, they're already there. They're ready. Okay. Yeah. Jet lag. We have to do things to prep people for jet lag. Shift work. Shift work is really detrimental. And you can go and read all kinds of things like how that right there, those people that do shift work have a higher incidence of colon cancer and breast cancer. And that is like enough said. Why? It's a circadian rhythm disruptor, but the body sees that as stress. So if you're already down and out because you have emotional stress, dietary stress, pain, hidden inflammation, all three or one going on at at not acute, but chronically for too long a period of time, and you are super fatigued, daylight savings times comes and it's like it rips the rug or knocks your legs right out from underneath you, and you feel it and just adjust or can eventually, but it takes you a long bit of time. Okay, so that's going to be both inflammatory and I would say coming in to perceive, but it could also be glycemic dysregulation because the circadian rhythm influences all of that. And I could get really down into the science, but I'm not going to do that. But I think we've gotten a little sciencey. But when the brain sees these stressors, and it's not just acute, because cortisol acutely, just like if you had a rash on your hand and went and squeezed some of that hydrocortisone cream on, okay, that's an acute. But if that keeps being chronic, then you need to go talk to someone, right? I mean, then you know that it's, whether it's your doctor or somebody like me, or, it's not just a Band-Aid, right? We need to figure out what that is. Like, but usually if we put on a bug bite, we're not constantly getting that bug bite. But if you are, then you got to find out what the cause, where's the bug, okay? In your home, you got to get rid of it. But nonetheless, cortisol is a great hormone and it's a necessary hormone. It helps with blood sugar. It helps with stress. It's also, I'm going to go back to perceived stress. What is cortisol doing? It's like fight or flight. Rest and digest is that parasympathetic. Sympathetic is that fight or flight. So in sympathetic, digestion shuts down. All of the hormones tell your body, norepinephrine and cortisol puts out signals. The brain tells it, puts out signals to do what? To be able to run and act fast and get out of that danger. So cortisol is needed. But when we're constantly having that threat of danger, and that's really what the body sees, that emotional, dietary, and pain-hidden inflammation is threat of danger, and it's putting out that cortisol to try and put out the fire. And it's not cortisol's fault. It's not the brain's fault. It's these things that we have, and that it's not even your fault necessarily, unless once you become aware, like you are right now by listening to this, that you keep doing these things, or you don't go seek help and get help doing it if you need a guide. And I love to guide you, but nonetheless, and so would Alex, love to guide you. We're experienced, we've been there, we've walked the walk, we've talked and we talk the talk, and we do it. We are like living our lifestyle because we've both been here, right? So it's doing these things, but if you don't do these things, then you're going to stay in this chronic, perpetual ping, 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 and you're feeling the effects, which is what? Fatigue. And yes, I'm probably going to help you with magnesium and say yes, but is magnesium alone going to help it? No. And I'm going to probably use this in the last time we talked, because I use this all the time and it's mine. Okay. My little adage here, right? So my little saying is that if you came into my office and you had a nail in your foot and you couldn't walk and your foot hurt, and I bathed the foot and disinfected the foot. So that's the supplements and all that stuff, but I didn't remove the nail. Would the foot heal? Well, you all know the answer, no. And the nail is finding which of these areas, okay, and it might be all of them, and having somebody then lay out a plan for you on how to address it. Because if you know you have all these areas affected, that alone and going, I got to fix all this, that could be overwhelming. Well, that's where you work with somebody and they help you walk through how to address these in a systematic order. And I mean, I'm going to kind of plug for myself a little tiny bit. I have a program called Energy RX that, because I saw so many people come into my office, and I would do the first consult and it would be 90 minutes, and I collect 321 multiple choice. I ask questions and get the answer back, and I look at the body systems and where the stress is coming from, and I look at food journals and meal timing for 6 days, food and mood journals, and have people keep that and ask us a lot of questions and get history and look at all that data and chart it all out. And then I would sit down for 90 minutes and tell them the plan and tell them in all of these areas, everything that they had to go home and change. And I would have, some people would be fine, maybe they were holding it, but some people would start to cry. Females mostly, and I don't want to say that's just because they're weak. It's not. It's that mostly women come to seek out this type of medicine. So that's probably why I can say mostly females. Right. They would get this overwhelming and go, I'm tired, plus you want me to change this, and I have 3 kids and I have soccer mom, whatever. And so they were overwhelmed. And that's where I developed from this stress response blueprint, because I knew fixing this was the key. I developed my program, which is called Energy RX, so that people could do a walkthrough and be taught how to do this in a systematic way. And that's my biggest plug or my only plug that I'll do for that. Anyway, but it does exist, and you either work with somebody like me or you do, an online program, and it's also bio-individual, and you get group support and group calls like this. So you're not alone in doing it, but that's, but find somebody or start just taking one thing. If like we've talked, I've been the talker kind of, but it helping you, and Alex will echo this, like, you have to change the lifestyle, but if you think that's overwhelming, then pick one thing. Pick eating more vegetables and dumping sugar, or pick being mindful and starting a meditation practice, and rock that out. Okay, you might not be able to fix the inflammatory part. If it's digestion and dysbiosis, you're probably going to need a test for that, but you can start working on other things. Remember, I said the biggest thing is emotional, and we can start doing things right now today. And the next biggest thing I would say is that we have control of is our diet. Okay. Yeah. And there's tons of free information out there. You can come to my website. I'm sure your website. I mean, I have a free email support that you can sign up for, how to do, certain different ancestral diets. You can buy books, there's a lot of great free information out there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, the first point of healing is just for you to know that, having all these like bloating and diarrhea or constipation or being fatigued, it's just not normal. And I think once you become aware of that, you can dive into all these 4 things that you've been talking about, and be mindful of, like, is it emotional? Is it, my diet? Is it because I'm going to bed every night at midnight? I mean, it's all these things that, we know them, but we have to really stop for a minute and just realize, what is it that is causing me to be sick? What is it that is causing me to be fatigued? What are my stressors? What is it that is really disrupting my life and not being healthy? Because if you're healthy, obviously you are doing all these things right. But if you're suffering from fatigue, diarrhea, all these things that we talk about, there's some underlying thing that it needs to be looked at. And as Heidi said, you can just start with, like, okay, maybe it's my stress, maybe it's my diet, maybe it's this or that. And if you ultimately cannot point out what is it that is really causing me to not have energy because I'm not absorbing the nutrients or whatever it is, do look for someone professional to guide you through these things. Look for a practitioner that you're comfortable, look online, look for a book, something that it's going to give you the start point for your healing. And remember, this is not a quick magic pill that you're just going to take and be like, yay, I was very fatigued yesterday, but today I'm just like fine.
I want to say one other thing within that. I know I said the Energy RX, we have a quick guide on my website. It'll be up, right? But if you download that, within that is a quiz. And you can tally that up and see where your biggest outlier is. Like, you might say, I'm having all of these, but you could start to identify. So the quiz is a mini quiz. You download it and then you take it and tally up, and then it will tell you, I will tell you within the document how I have it written, is how to figure out, like, is perceived stress my biggest outlier? Is maybe they're going to be equal, but you might see one, and then that will help you identify. And then within the document, I tell you what to start doing, similar to this conversation we're having here, that this is what you start working on. But it's not the whole 321 multiple choice questions I give, but it's definitely going to be, I don't remember questions, but it's a smaller version of that you can take on your own. So, it's free. I'm not going to give you, come in, you don't have to pay me anything for it, but you can start to work on this on your own, and or work with somebody.
Yeah. I think it's just, once we start and, there's so many free tools out there too. So if you feel like you've been feeling off, you're not at your optimal health, look for assistance, look for help. There's free tools, as I just mentioned, books. A lot of the practitioners out there, they give you like a 20-30 minute free consultation and also tell you, like, hey, we might have to do this and this to find out. But I think your body, your life is just so worth to do that.
Yes, it is. It is. And you have to decide if it's for you. So I 100% agree. You matter and you are worth it.
Exactly.
And the most powerful person in your life is you. 100%.
Exactly.
But you have to take that power. You have to take it and own it and want it. You might be thinking, but I have children. Okay. But you got to put your own face mask on first, or you can't help those kids. You can't show up for them if you're not showing up for yourself.
Exactly. And not just for that, I feel like a lot of people, even that they don't have like kids or, like a big family to take care of, I feel like they just, you're on these like so autopilot life that you're just like going and going and going, and you go to work and you wake up and go to work and, do this and do that and start all over again, that you forget how you need to feel good. You are on this fatigue life for so long that it almost becomes your normal, but it is not. And I think at the long run, it's going to really affect your health. You don't want to become 40, 50 and have all these other diseases now, and now you're facing diabetes, heart problems, I don't know, all these other problems that come with you not being able to fix it now, and even if you're on your 40s and 50s now and you're experiencing this, know that you could actually change all that and feel really good, feel healthy, and feel just good and overall.
And you deserve it.
Exactly. Come on.
Deserves it. Yes. Come on. Yes.
Come on. No, yeah. I hope everybody got something out of this conversation. I know we dive deep into all these 4 different aspects on the adrenals and the body and the science and all that. But I feel like, sometimes you really need to listen to all these to get a big picture and have an idea what's going on. And so thank you, Heidi, for being here today. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yes,
is there something else that you would like to finish our conversation with today?
No, I've had a lot of the floor, so I appreciate that. And I love coming on. I think we should do this again. So thank you very much.
And we will.
And thank you, everybody. And I appreciate your time and having me on as a guest. And it's been awesome.
No, we love you here. And if anybody wants to contact you or send you a message, or if they have a question or they're actually going through all these adrenal fatigue and they don't know where to start, where can they find you? How can they contact you?
Okay, so the best way to reach me is going to be Heidi Toy Functional Medicine. Okay, Heidi Toy Functional Medicine, and I'm on all the main social media, so you can find me there too with Heidi Toy Functional Medicine, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all of those different places. If you want to get in contact, of course, you can come to the website and you can download that free guide, and you can also sign up for a discovery session. If you email me individually and start asking me questions, I'm going to still redirect you to talking with me so that we can get like this versus private messaging. I would love to be able to private message with everybody, but I have to be right up front. I am a busy practitioner and I have a whole, group of people. And that doesn't mean I don't want to help you. It's just that it's easier if we condense it into, say, a 20-30 minute conversation and getting you the help you need or pointing you in the right direction. So that's where I'm going to direct you. And even if you come through that, we're going to redirect you to signing up because it's a free call for you. So no obligation. And so Heidi Toy Functional Medicine, my website, there's lots of free information, blogs, email series on how to eat, grocery shopping. Adrenal fatigue. There's a whole one on there, the whole email series on adrenal fatigue. So, all of that good jazz. So that's the best way to get a hold of me. I appreciate you asking.
Awesome. And I will put all her information on the show notes for all of you guys to get in contact with Heidi if you need to. And remember, my book is out. You can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. If you want to get in contact with me or send me a message, you can find me on alexbalgood.com. You'll find all my social media. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, pretty much everywhere. And yeah, send me a message. Let me know your, questions, concerns, comments, anything. We are so excited to have you today, Heidi, and we will have you again. So I'm just
All right.
really excited.
Good. Me too. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I always love these talks.
I love this. Thank you, everyone, for listening today, and have a blessed and amazing day. Thank you.